Welcome to Medical Myths, Legends, and Fairytales. I'm your host, Dr. Alan Christianson. Look, you know that between the latest online fads and the crazy media headlines, it's easier than ever to get confused about your health. And you and I just want to feel better and live longer. We want to know what works. And we can't wait for further studies. We need to make decisions today based on the best evidence we've got. Well, that's exactly what this show is here for. So let's get to it. Hey, Dr. C here with you. So this is the Thyroid Beginner Series, and this is the installment on medications, on thyroid medications. So big story, often a shocking story. These are the most widely prescribed medications globally. Typically, they're in the top 1 to 3 of all used medications. So a lot of people take these. And in the last several years, there's been a lot of analysis at, how much they actually help people. Do they lower hypothyroid symptoms? Do they lower the health risks associated with hypothyroidism? Do they cut the risk of other thyroid problems? And there are some subsets of people where they are needed and they are helpful. And that's those who don't have a thyroid, those whose thyroid was destroyed by radioablation, or those who have severe hypothyroidism. That's where the TSH is greater than 20 and the T4 is way below range. So let's set those cases aside. Everybody else, in a group analysis, there's no net benefit. So yeah, thyroid medications don't help people lose weight. They don't give them more energy. They don't help them have a lower risk of future thyroid problems. They don't cut their risk of heart disease. They actually create complications. There have been several studies showing that people on thyroid medications have higher risks of health issues than similar people who are not on medications. So that's the situation. Most people on medications are not benefiting, and many are being exposed to substantial health risks. But what if someone says, yeah, but I'm on medication and I feel better? Well, a couple thoughts. In almost all situations, someone who's put on medication, they also do other things. They change their diet. They add in some supplements. They address their lifestyle in some way. They manage their stress. And it's easy to think, oh yeah, these things are nice, but the medication probably made the biggest difference. But in large studies, the value of them is that they have just one variable. They'll match people up to where they're doing the same things in every way, but one group is on medication and one group is not. And when medications are the only variable, things don't help. So if you do seem that you feel better on medication, it's possible you are unusual, but it's also possible that other things you're doing are helping more than you might expect. And it's important because, again, medications are not harmless. And here's the high-level idea. As a natural endocrinologist, for a long time, it seemed to me that if you gave someone a hormone that was chemically identical to what their body made, and you gave a dose that seemed reasonable, you watched their blood levels, and they had blood levels that were just like healthy people who were making that hormone by themselves. It seemed like in that situation, that person should be just like the healthy person, not on medication. And that's kind of the assumption behind so much of, sadly, natural endocrinology and hormone replacement. And it's something that we can't really assume anymore. We now know that when we take something from outside of the body, we change how the body balances its other hormones. And a lot of things go on behind the scenes that we know of and many more that we don't know of. One study looked at people in a large group of people on thyroid medication, and it closely tracked to see how many had certain health risk factors like high blood pressure, or how many were overweight, or how many had high cholesterol. And then took a group of people that were basically identical with all the same risks, but the only difference was they were not on thyroid medication. And what they saw was that just being on thyroid medication, even though their blood levels, their thyroid levels were the same as the other group, they had twice the mortality risk. Yeah, they had a 50% increased risk of mortality just from that one difference alone. So we can't really assume anymore that intervening is the same as the body doing it by itself. The phrase that I've thought of is that making a hormone is not the same as taking a hormone. And as much as possible, we want our bodies to make the hormone. And the paradox is that if you're taking it, you can make it harder for your body to make it, of course. And you can cause a big range, not just the risks, but also symptoms. When you're taking a hormone, in many cases, your body will fight that hormone. And this is why many people have symptoms like weight gain or fatigue, and they're put on thyroid medication. And these symptoms not only don't get better, but they often get worse. And they think, well, how could this be? If this was caused by my thyroid, why would it not be better by taking thyroid hormone? Well, it can be caused by the thyroid, but when you're taking that hormone, you might be altering how your body responds to all the thyroid hormones, including your own. So yeah, those are some high-level ideas. So you need to start thyroid medication if you don't have a thyroid, if you're about to get your thyroid taken out, if you're about to have it destroyed by radioablation, or if you have severe hypothyroidism, meaning your TSH is really high and your T4 is way below range and nothing else has helped. And I want to stress that last point because many people, even those with overt hypothyroidism, they can still get better by diet changes and by supplements, by some combination. Somewhere around 60% of them can still improve. So medication's an option for them, but it's not necessarily the only option. So that's who needs medication. Now, briefly, what if you're already on medication and you may be in that category that didn't need them? Well, first off, how would you know? Well, the only way to know for sure would be to review your labs before you went on thyroid medication. And in some cases, doctors give a really clear diagnosis. Sadly, they often don't. People often are told that, well, your thyroid is sluggish, we should start on this now before it burns out. Or they're told you've got Hashimoto's, this will help protect your thyroid. Or they're told, yeah, your thyroid's a little low, that's why you're tired, the medication will help. Those are all pretty big red flags that medications aren't going to be appropriate and are going to simply cause risks. Now, to be precise, if it were a situation where the thyroid was pretty well shut off, then yeah, that can be appropriate. But what if you're on the meds and maybe you're someone who didn't need them? What do you do then? Well, I've got some digital programs and some blogs that I've made about this whole thing of deprescribing. So in the medical literature, once people saw how common it was that people were unnecessarily on thyroid medication, the logical question was, well, what about people who are taking them? Then can they come off? What should they do? And a lot of studies were launched in which people were taken off medications to see how well that worked for them. And the tricky thing, it's tough because these studies included people, many of whom had severe hypothyroidism, and many of whom probably could have benefited from medication. But in all the studies that I'm about to cite, they were still included. So there was many people that had mild and moderate hypothyroidism, but some that had it severely. But even with that, roughly 84% of people could successfully lower their dosage with no bad symptoms and no negative changes to their blood levels. And of them, about half could come off completely. So most people can take less and many can come off altogether. Now, there's a bit of a process to this. The medical term is deprescribing. And it's something that you want to do with your prescriber's guidance and blessing, and you also want to do with the guidance of a deprescriber. Now, the tough thing is that not all prescribers are deprescribers. Yeah, they should be, and there's more understanding of that, but too many doctors don't really know the art and science of deprescribing. But there is a process to it, and I've written about this in some detail. I've made some programs about that. But if you're someone that may not need medication, take a look at those resources. You can just Google my name and deprescribing, and you'll see a lot of things to learn more about. Talk to your prescriber about that. You also may wish to consider a good guide of a doctor who does know how to do that. Most naturopathic endocrinologists are trained in deprescribing. That's one good place to start out. But medications are, wrapping this up, are so important because many people are on them unnecessarily. Many are on them and they're not the best types. So of those who do need medication, there's different categories. Some are only T4. And these are the most common ones used. This includes brands like Synthroid and levothyroxine. Others also include T3 and T2. And this is natural thyroid. That's brands like Armour, Adthyza, and NP Thyroid. And there's a lot of folks who need thyroid medication who only feel well when they get a combination of all those hormones. And yeah, one way is to take natural thyroid. The other way is to include T3 along with a T4 prescription. T3 is a medicine called Cytomel. It's a brand name Cytomel, or leothyronine is the generic. And so one approach is to work in a certain amount of T3 with T4. And when they're given in separate forms, it's generally not much T3 that's needed. It may just be 5 or 10 micrograms. They work differently when they're isolated and synthetic than they do when they're found together in natural thyroid. So yeah, many people who do need medication but aren't feeling well, they can benefit by just switching over to a form that includes T3. But many people who were on medication unnecessarily, there's no amount of medicine that's going to make them feel good because it's getting in the way of their own thyroid. So their best approach is to take as little as possible and come off if that is an option. And the next steps that I'll talk about are all ones that make the idea of lowering medication appropriate. And some people, when they do things to get healthier, it will be suddenly apparent that their dose of medication is now too high. And that means they can, of course, with their prescriber's guidance, they can lower that. But there are those who are candidates to lower their medicine and come off, even when their scores don't say they're getting too much. So that's where it becomes more of an art and a conversation. So medications, if you need them, you got to take the ones that work best. You got to take the best amounts. And if you don't need them, you should get them out of the way and let your thyroid take over. So in this next installment, I'll talk about the iodine story. And this is a fascinating one, and it's so central to all the steps towards natural thyroid care. Hope you join me then, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. Hey, Dr. Christianson here. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode. Is there a topic you'd like me to cover? I'd love to hear from you. Just go to Dr. Alan Christianson on Facebook or Instagram, write your question, and use the hashtag #MedicalMyths. Did you find this show helpful? If so, please take a minute and leave us a rating on iTunes so that others can know. Thanks much, and I'll be back with you real soon. Bye-bye.